Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our 9th workshop in the PhD seminar series in business management. And our topic that we are still handling is navigating the PhD terrain, but this time looking at citations, references, and plagiarism in academic writing. If you recall, in our workshop 7, we did cover issues of crafting a theorized storyline. And then, of course, we did say that under that arrangement, you need to combine or bring together field experiences and what we call the academic audience as well. So combining these two and bring them together in order to get onto a discussion of something that is very relevant was very central in that workshop, ladies and gentlemen. In our workshop 8, we did look at literature review because from crafting a theorized storyline, issues of literature came up. Now, again, when we discussed issues of literature review, in our 8th workshop, issues of plagiarism came up. And there is no way we can ignore this important element of plagiarism, ladies and gentlemen. Now, in our workshop 9, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the structure of our presentation. I'll give you an introduction, ladies and gentlemen. I'll take you through types of plagiarism, where we have plagiarism of ideas, word-for-word plagiarism. Then we have plagiarism of sources. We have plagiarism of authorship, ladies and gentlemen, and what we call institutional plagiarism. And under institutional plagiarism, we have ghostwriting, we have honorary authorship, and we have political speech writing, ladies and gentlemen. So anyway, that all those things that I've just mentioned can be lumped up into what we call types of plagiarism. And thereafter, I'll take you to the third element, which is actually APA, that is American Psychological Association style of referencing. We've got so many others, like the Harvard style of referencing, the Chicago style of referencing, etc., etc. But for purposes of our discussion here in this workshop, we shall center on APA, and of course, we shall ask ourselves a number of questions. When is APA style used, ladies and gentlemen? And then we shall move to text citations, and then references, ladies and gentlemen. So allow me right now to take you to the concept of plagiarism, right? Now, the verb plagiarize is defined in the Shorter Oxford Dictionary as follows, and they define it as taking or take and use as one's own the thoughts, the writings, and the inventions of another person, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, if you continue looking up for the definition, you'll discover that this involves, for instance, copying improperly or without acknowledgement, and that is copying the literary work or copying ideas or copying innovations and inventions improperly or without acknowledgement, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, this could also be looked at in terms of passing off the thoughts, or the work, the inventions, etc., of another person as one's own, ladies and gentlemen. So that is our definition. Now, plagiarism is when you copy directly from someone else's work without acknowledging or citing the original author, ladies and gentlemen. In other words, you take credit for someone else's work. And in academic writing, ladies and gentlemen, as I did intimate in our workshop 8, in academic writing, this is the same as cheating on exams, ladies and gentlemen. And in academic context, acknowledgement is typically given in the form of citations or even explicit statements of thanks to the individuals who may have actually contributed towards your research. And acknowledgement is important for a a number of reasons, ladies and gentlemen, because you want to give credit for ideas or words which are not yours, and to provide support for one's argument, and to show that one is aware of sources, ladies and gentlemen. And to speak of proper acknowledgement is to focus on the positive side of scholarly practice, and to speak of plagiarism, ladies and gentlemen, is to focus on the negative as well. So I think you can see the importance of these things and why we need to understand what plagiarism is. Plagiarism is conventionally seen as a serious breach of scholarly ethics. Plagiarism is conventionally seen as being a theft of credit for ideas in a competitive intellectual marketplace, ladies and gentlemen. And among intellectuals, plagiarism is normally treated as a grievous sin, ladies and gentlemen. So why do people plagiarize? Because again, that would be another question, because we all know, if you are in scholarship, why would you be tempted to do something that is incorrect, something that is unprofessional? And the answers are very simple. People plagiarize because A, of ignorance, right? And that is possible because somebody does not know how to cite, how to acknowledge the source of ideas that he's using in his work. Two, of course, now on the side of students, students are natural economizers, you know that very well. So therefore, they do not want to really struggle to go and read and dig up this and the other, or even go and buy a number of journal articles and books and then read and they come up with a synthesis of material. Now, of course, that is what it is now. The other aspect that some students fear that their writing ability is inadequate. So they are not really confident of their writing abilities. So when they read a particular text, and they get excited about that particular text, and the next thing they do is to copy slabs of material from that particular journal article. So they copy sentences, they copy paragraphs and so forth because of that fear of being inadequate in terms of writing, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, the other aspect, that of tutoring, which is out of control. Many people have not been taught how to do this. And of course, others cheat in self-defense. Others, of course, lack perceived punishment, ladies and gentlemen. Because of lack of perceived punishment, they don't say the reason why they can't copy, ladies and gentlemen. And many students have poor time management and planning skills. So by the time they really realize that they must do something, it's very late. So they must actually engage in copying, especially when you are given an assignment as a PhD student and you put it aside, and then you only discover a day before, you start panicking because you don't know what to do. So when you have poor time management and planning skills, then you end up copying. And of course, some students do not believe professors actually read research papers. Now, when you underestimate and underrate your professors and then say, well, they will not be able to read all these things, then of course you end up, of course, plagiarizing people's work. Right, let's now go to what we call types of plagiarism, right, where we have plagiarism of ideas, word for word plagiarism, then we have plagiarism of sources, plagiarism of authorship, and of course institutional plagiarism, ladies and gentlemen. So allow me now to go into plagiarism of ideas. Now, plagiarism of ideas occurs especially when individuals start claiming credit for someone else's thoughts, ideas or inventions, right? And that's what you call plagiarism of ideas, because the thoughts are not yours, the ideas are not yours, the inventions are not yours. So, but when you pick that work from somewhere and you start telling others that is your work, because you have not cited the sources of those ideas, then that becomes what we call plagiarism of ideas, ladies and gentlemen. And this occurs, for example, when, I'm just giving you an example, when a corporation adopts the idea of an independent inventor, claiming it as its own. So that would be plagiarism of ideas, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, plagiarism of ideas can also take different forms. And so providing plagiarism of ideas can be very, very, very Well, not really very simple. So we know that corporations plagiarize, we know that individuals plagiarize ideas, then we must prove, right? Of course, these claims that there was this element of plagiarism. So proving plagiarism of ideas can be difficult because of the possibility of independent creation, ladies and gentlemen. And I can give you an example here. In the case of the theory of evolution, Alfred Russel Wallace is credited with the independent discovery of the theory of evolution. But if he had known about Darwin's work prior to his own, he might be accused of plagiarism, ladies and gentlemen. That's plagiarism of ideas. So today, anyone claiming credit for the theory of evolution is assumed to be a plagiarist because the theory is so widely known today. So let's again continue our discussion with this element of plagiarism of ideas. Now, a student reviewing a book might develop ideas on her own, but would be guilty of plagiarism of ideas if she was inspired by a book review, either published or unpublished, but didn't mention this review in her own work. Another possibility is that maybe the student was talking with friends about book and well, that student was talking about that particular book with the students and picked up an insight from one of them and then used it in her review as if the idea was her own. Then that will still be plagiarism of ideas, ladies and gentlemen. So let's now transit from plagiarism of ideas and go to word-for-word plagiarism. So, and of course, as you can see here, because this is word-for-word plagiarism, that is copying the exact expression of someone's writing, and that can be called word-for-word plagiarism. There is plagiarism of ideas, because when you read a journal article, and the book, you pick ideas, but you do not acknowledge the source of those ideas. That is plagiarism of ideas. But word for word, you copy. It is actually copy and paste, right? Copying the exact expression of someone else's writing. And that can be called word for word plagiarism, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, as you can see, I do not even have to really belabor, bring out this particular concept, ladies and gentlemen. So that is what it is, plagiarism of word per word is an offense, just like plagiarism of ideas is also an academic offense. So let's go to plagiarism of sources, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to use an example here. If writer R uses writer S's citations, right? And this is what usually happens with the PhD students and master's students. So you pick my work, read it, but instead of really looking at the reference section and going to the internet and look for those journal articles and read and get the ideas, but after picking my work, certainly, you go to the reference section and copy, right, the whole of that section and take it to your work. So that will be plagiarism of sources. If writer R uses writer's S's citations without acknowledging that the citations came from S, this can be called plagiarism of sources, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll give you an example from one of the chapters, maybe one of the books that has been widely cited and read by many scholars. So, for example, in the chapter from which the above sentence was drawn, Schmidt cites several articles from the New York Times. And of course, he takes up what we call the Max Horkheimer's Eclipse of Reason and Robert N. Proctor's Value Free Science, ladies and gentlemen. So, as you can see, if A made an argument similar to Schmidt's, citing Schmidt, and used the same set of references, perhaps adding a few or omitting some without noting that Schmidt had used the same ones for the same purpose, this would be plagiarism of sources. So, and that's why when you actually write or come up with your piece of work, it's very important to subject this to the anti-plagiarism software. And you will see all those sections highlighted, or the references. Then you know there was actually plagiarism of sources, ladies and gentlemen. So I will not really go into details of this because now you know what plagiarism of sources is all about. So let's go to plagiarism of authorship. Right, if R claims to be the author of an entire piece of work, let's say an article, an essay, a book, a musical composition, ladies and gentlemen, that is, he claims he has written this and fully or substantially authored by S, right? This can be called plagiarism of authorship. Right, let me just repeat this a little bit. We are talking about plagiarism of authorship. If R claims to be the author of an entire piece of work, that's an article, an essay, or a book, a musical composition, which was fully or substantially authored by S, this can be called plagiarism of authorship, ladies and gentlemen. So this occurs when a scientist submits a paper that has already been published by someone else. So that is plagiarism of authorship. The paper wasn't yours. It was written by somebody else. But you submit it, right, as your own. So I can give you an example. When a student submits an essay written by someone else, such as a friend, or someone who has been paid to write it, that is plagiarism of authorship. Now, in academics, when an academic is listed as author of work largely produced by a spouse or research assistant or a student, that is still plagiarism of authorship. When a subordinate or a speech writer or ghost writer does the bulk of intellectual work for a work produced under the name of a celebrity, or a politician or corporate executive, or someone else with money or position or status, that qualifies to be plagiarism of authorship, ladies and gentlemen. So plagiarism of authorship often involves word-for-word plagiarism, but not always. And of course, translating an article from another language and publishing it under one's name as if one had written it is plagiarism of authorship, but not word-for-word plagiarism in this case. So it is worth noting, ladies and gentlemen, attending this workshop, right, that plagiarism does not necessarily involve copyright infringement. A ghostwriter might write a book for a celebrity who appears as the sole author. The celebrity or the book publisher would normally hold the copyright, ladies and gentlemen. So that is what we call plagiarism of authorship, ladies and gentlemen. So let's now move to another aspect, taking us towards the end of our presentation, the second part of our presentation, and that is really going into APA, or what we call the American Psychological Association. So what is APA? APA is an abbreviation for American Psychological Association, and this is the most commonly used format for manuscripts in the social sciences. And of course, the American Psychological Association regulates the style, it regulates the in-text citations, and it regulates references, and of course it provides a list of all sources used. So it's very important for you to know, ladies and gentlemen, that when you copy somebody else's work and you take credit for it, that is plagiarism. Now, one way to overcome plagiarism is to properly cite or reference your work. Yes. And every effort must be made by the researcher or researchers, the PhD students and the master's students to cite every source of the ideas that they use in their work, ladies and gentlemen. So APA, alongside the other referencing styles, like the Chicago referencing, like the Harvard referencing, like the Oxford referencing, etc., helps you to overcome this problem of copying or this problem of plagiarizing somebody else's work, ladies and gentlemen. So why should I cite, ladies and gentlemen? The reasons are already known. Citing identifies sources used in a research paper or a research project. It gives credit to those researchers or authors and writers whose words or ideas you borrow, acknowledging their role in shaping your research, ladies and gentlemen. Again, citing allows others to follow up on or retrieve this material in case it is needed. And of course, the other reason why you must cite is because you want to avoid charges of plagiarism, and it is also unprofessional to do that kind of thing. So when do we use the American Psychological Association referencing style? So when do we use APA style of referencing? Of course, you use the APA in the courseworks that you are given, right? You must use this. In the research reports that you submit, you must use the APA. Empirical studies you undertake, you'll use APA. The literature review that we just covered in our previous workshop, that was workshop 8, you must still reference and use APA style of referencing. In theoretical articles, again, you must cite, you must reference. In methodological articles, you must do the same thing. And case studies, ladies and gentlemen, you must reference. Right, so let's now move on to this difficult terrain of citing. How do we cite, especially if you are going to use APA style of referencing? Now, of course, information from sources must be cited, and I'm sure you are aware of that because I've been talking about this. And this acknowledges the author's work and allows the reader to access the information in the reference section of your paper. Now, of course, if you're going to reference, please, the ideas and the guidelines are straightforward. Follow the author, and of course here you must take the surname, and then the date, right? Author, date, right? Author, you take the surname of that particular person, and the date, right? Like you'd say Smith, 2008. If Smith is a surname, and the year of publication of that journal article was 2008. So follow the author, date, method of in-text citation, and if no date is available, ladies and gentlemen, you write ND. So you can write Smith, write into brackets, you say ND. That means no date. Of course, you write ND in place of the date, ladies and gentlemen. But the author's last name and the year of publication for the source should appear in the text. For example, you have Jones, 1998, Smith, 1998, Mukasa, 1998, Okello, 1998, Chibuka, 1998, Ocheng, 1998, Cabanyolo, 1998, or Mwesugwa, 2005, or 2019. So you take the surname, right? And all that information certainly must appear in parentheses. So 3 key points in the American Psychological Association citations: use author, date format whenever possible, right? Author, date, format whenever possible. And if the source is quoted, you must include the page or paragraph number. So if you lift, right, a sentence, right, then that is a quotation. You must include the page or paragraph number, right? And you must include that in double quotation marks. Now, if author's name is not available, use the title of the document in place of the author's name, ladies and gentlemen. So we have 3 types of text citations. We've got a paraphrase, and that is really a summary. Then we have a short quote of less than 40 words, and then we have long quote of more than 40 words. So how do we reference this information that seems to be, or that seems to have been paraphrased, and of course a short quote and a long quote. Now, in text citations, ladies and gentlemen, and we are dealing with a paraphrase. A paraphrase is material from a source which has been summarized in your own words. And all paraphrases must be cited using the author's last name and the year of publication. So no page number is required here, ladies and gentlemen. So you will say Smith, 2007, Buck, 2007, Okello, 2007, etc. Right, that is for a paraphrase. And now if the author's name, if you want that name to be part of the formal structure of the sentence, right, then you follow the author's names. You write the author's names, of course the surname, and the year of publication appears in parentheses, ladies and gentlemen. Like you'd say, Buck 2007 found that children begin to play organized games with rules once they reach school age, or school-going age, or school age, ladies and gentlemen. Similarly, you can say that maybe Mukasa 2017 found that insulin dosage increased maybe chances of recovery, ladies and gentlemen. So all those are what we call citing, but in situations where you have a paraphrase, ladies and gentlemen. So author's last name and the year of publication appears as part of the formal structure of the sentence. Now, of course, when the author's name is not part, that's now the second aspect of the author's name is not part of the formal structure of the sentence, right? And the author's name and your publications are included, in this case, at the end of the sentence, ladies and gentlemen, and that appears in a parenthesis. For instance, you would say, just to give you an example, studies conducted found that children begin to use organized play and games with rules at school age. And then at the end of that sentence, you have Bak or Mukasa or Cheng in parentheses, Bak 2019, you close the parenthesis and then you put a full stop. So the author's last name and your publication appears there. Of course, not forgetting the full stop, ladies and gentlemen. Now, that is for citations, right? And certainly, if you want the author's name to be part of the formal structure of the sentence, and if you don't want the author's name to be part of the formal structure of the sentence. Now, let's talk about the in-text citations, what to include in the parenthesis, right? Now, if the author's name is part of the sentence, place only the year of publication in parentheses. Like we had an example of Ocheng 2007 found that children begin to play. So if it is part of that sentence. But of course, if you do not want the author's name to be part of the formal structure of the sentence, place both the name and the year separated by a comma in parentheses and at the end of that particular sentence. Now, if you've got a short quote of less than 40 words, what do? A direct quote is information included in a paper which is taken directly from the source, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, short quotes, and here we mean quotes of less than 40 words, enclosed within quotation marks. They must be enclosed within the quotation marks and of course cited using the author's last name and year of publication and page number or paragraph, ladies and gentlemen, in this perspective. So let me just give an example, right? Supposing you have picked a sentence and the sentence is actually reads, reading makes use of many skills at once, taxing all aspects of our information processing systems. You must enclose that in double quotation marks, right? And of course, at the end of the double quotation mark, you have a parenthesis, and then you have the last name or the surname of the author of the paper, like Mugisha. You have Mugisha, comma, 2019, comma, then P, indicating the page P, then full stop, 306, and then you close the quotation marks. You close with the parenthesis in this case. So it means that the author of the paper is back, right? The paper was published in 2019, or Mugisha published in 2019, and this work was copied from page 306, but it must be enclosed in double quotation marks. And of course, the last double quotation mark is placed at the sentence before the citation, ladies and gentlemen. So again, that is if you have one. Now, if, for instance, you've got more than one author, right, still you'll have all those names there of the fellows who authored that particular paper. Now, of course, if your quote is more than 40 words, right, more than 40 words, of course, you must use block formatting. So quotes over 40 words must be block formatted, ladies and gentlemen. So quotation marks are not used in this case. The entire block quote is indented 5 spaces and double spaced, ladies and gentlemen. So of course you'll indent, you say, back 2007, found the following to be true. Then you have a colon. And then you say, we have seen that middle childhood, of course it is block formatted. And 5, I hope you remember what I gave you a few minutes ago in terms of the requirement. Quotation marks are not used here, but the entire block quote is indented 5 spaces and double spaced, ladies and gentlemen. So like I would say, back or Mugisha 2019 found the following to be true. So you have that text which is block formatted. We have seen that middle childhood brings major advances in perspectives, in perspective taking, the capacity to imagine what other people may be thinking and feeling, and these changes support etc. Now at the end, of course, you indicate and say P327. That is if the author of that paper is part of the formal structure of the sentence, ladies and gentlemen. Right, of course, we've got so many other citation formats, ladies and gentlemen, and I just want to give you a summary of this. Just look at the screen here, right, and the screen, you'll see that I've given you a table, right, and there you've got a type of citation. So you've got columns. The column 1 is a type of citation. Column 2, you've got first citation in text. Then, of course, column 3, subsequent citation in text. Then column 4, parenthetical format of first. And then the next one is parenthetical format second. I'm sure you are seeing this information here. So if you have, for instance, one author, right, first citation text, you have Walker 2000. Right. Again, if you go to subsequent citation text, Walker 2000. Then if you go to parenthetical format, you still in parentheses, you say format Walker 2007. And if you go for parenthetical format, it's still the same thing. So it doesn't really change from the one you have in parenthetical format. Right, but let's just take a unique one because in the interest of time, well, we should be closing, right? If you have 5 authors, again, first citation in text, all the 5 names appear, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have Walker, Allen, Bradley, Ramirez, and so 2008. Then subsequent citation in text, you say Walker et al. And et al. Here, you have et al. And others. You will have a full stop, right? And of course, you continue citing. You put the publication in parentheses, right? And then, of course, the moment you go to parenthetic format first, then you have Walker, Allen. I'm sure you are seeing that. That is for 5 authors. Walker, Allen, Bradley, Ramirez, and so 2008. Right. Now, of course, if you go to parenthetical format second, then you have Walker et al. 2008. So again, if you go to 6 and many authors, the first time you cite, you have Wasson et al. So only one name the first author appears. Then you say Mukasa et al, Mugisha et al, 2005. You put that, and for that is for the first citation in text. I'm sure you are seeing what I'm talking about. 6+ authors here, and then of course the second subsequent citation again is Wasson et al, 2005. Then of course parenthetical format. You've got Wassel et al, full stop, then comma. Right, 2005, and then you do the same for the parenthetical format, ladies and gentlemen. So this is what we have in APA publication manual. And then, of course, we've got so many other rules here, ladies and gentlemen. In the interest of time, I will not really go into these things, ladies and gentlemen. But we can briefly now go to what we call in-text citations, but using electronic sources. How do we cite electronic sources within the text that we are writing, ladies and gentlemen? So when citing an electronic document, whenever possible, cite it in the author date style. Now, if electronic source lacks page or numbers, locate, right, and identify paragraph numbers or paragraph heading, ladies and gentlemen. I can give you an example, right, and I think this can be shown on the screen here. You can see it, where you simply say that recent research has yielded similar results, right, like Smith, 1997, right, or you have Smith, comma, 1997, comma, paragraph, but you say para, right, full stop, 6, then you close the parenthesis. Para, full stop 6 is paragraph 6, ladies and gentlemen. So that's how you really do it. And when the author's name, still if you locate the electronic document, but the author's name is designated as anonymous, because you'll find anonymous documents on the internet, cite in text the word anonymous followed by a comma and the date. For example, you say, you open the quote, right, not quote, the parenthesis, and then you say anonymous, comma, 1998, ladies and gentlemen. And in the reference list, an anonymous work is alphabeticized by the word anonymous as the author with the remaining publication data, ladies and gentlemen. So again, in-text citations or the unknown authors, we do the same thing. Now, when a work has no identified author, cite the title of the reference and the year. If it is a long title, use the first few words. Use quotation marks around the title of an article, a chapter or a web page, and italicize the title of a journal or a book or brochure or report, ladies and gentlemen. And an example is where you can say recent research reveals, then in the brackets, because you did not have a known author, right? In brackets say 6 sites meet, right? Assuming that was the title of the paper, right? But if it was very long, you take the first few words, 6 sites meet, right? That should be put in a quotation mark. 6 sites meet is in a double quotation marks, right? And then you put a comma and you say 2006 significantly, then you say blah, 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 and continue. Now, full publication title is 6 sites meet for comprehensive anti-gang initiative conference. Notice the title was shortened for the in-text citations because the title was too long to be included in the whole referencing section. But if it is short, like college-bound seniors, you do the same. Say college-bound seniors assert, that kind of thing, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we have. And I think what I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to skip a number of things in the interest of time, right? And then take you to the reference page format, ladies and gentlemen. So I've taken you to the end, but in between there are a number of things. I just want to encourage you to go and pick what we call the APA style of referencing, so that you see how text citations are handled, and if a journal article has certain additional information, this information will probably appear in the reference section, ladies and gentlemen. So how do we now handle the referencing? You know, every paper will have, at the end of that particular paper, you'll have a reference section or bibliography, right? And of course, there's a difference between bibliography and reference. In case of bibliography, you really cite the works you have referred to, including the ones that you think may have significantly informed your paper, although you did not read those books. And that's what we call a bibliography. Now, for reference, you only pick those specific journals that are cited within the text, and therefore those are the ones that appear in the reference section, ladies and gentlemen. So references cited throughout text are listed in alphabetical order by author's last name on a new page following the text. And of course, there must be what we call hanging indentation, which is actually used in this case for all references. And of course, the entire reference page is double-spaced, and of course, it's also important to note that center the title reference at the top of the page, and that's what the APA style format tells us. Do not bold, underline, or use quotation marks for the title, ladies and gentlemen. APA reference format always follows an important type or style, ladies and gentlemen. So I think in the interest of time again, let me show you how we actually reference, and this is what we call the reference formula, right? The reference formula, you will have the author or author's last name, right? The author or author's last name, right? That comes first, and then include all authors as they are listed, ladies and gentlemen. Then what follows next is the year of publication. If no date is available, again, write ND, right? Title of the book or title of the article, right? And then, of course, we need publication data. Where do I locate the source material? For example, book publishing company information, full website address, journal name, newspaper name, magazine name, or include issue and page number for journals and newspapers and magazines, ladies and gentlemen. So, for purposes of demonstrating to you, right, just look at the screen here, and on the screen I have given you an example of how we do that, and I want to use an example, right, of the material we place on the reference section, but starting with the journal article with the DOI. So if you have a journal article with a digital object identifier, DOI refers to a digital object identifiers, and these days almost every journal article has that digital. So like now we say Muzinski J, just as you see it here, and Degman D 1996, then you have a full stop. Body language of women and judgments of vulnerability to sexual assault. Of course, you can see the indenting taking place here, right? Whereas you have Muzinski, but the second line starts around 5 letters after that, after M, U, R, Z, Y, and just below N, right? Muzinski, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After 5 letters, then you have that kind of thing, right? And the same, well, after that, you have the title of the journal article, then the Journal of Applied Psychology, right? That is now the journal where the article was published. 26, of course, and of course you have the volume, you have the page numbers 1617 to 1626, and then you have DOI, Digital Object Identifier, right? 10.1111, then you have /J dash full stop 1559 dash 1816 etc, that kind of thing, and it will vary from one paper to another. So for the journal article without digital object identifier, you do the same thing, but just do away with the digital object identifier because it's not there. So again, you can see on the screen that kind of example, ladies and gentlemen. So journal article without a digital object identifier that was retrieved online can also be cited or referenced, not cited in this case, referenced as shown on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. Like Aldrich D 1991, full stop, Spirituality, Healing and Medicine, that's the journal article. British Journal of General Practice, that's the journal where the paper was published. And 41, that's the volume. Page 425 to 427, those are page numbers, retrieved from HTTP. So we go ahead and demonstrate the World Wide Web, ladies and gentlemen. So you have the URL in that perspective. So all those details must be there, and they are very important because you may not be able to. Now, so those were the journal articles, but let's go to a book. How do we now reference a book, right, that appeared in our text? So if you have, for instance, again, just look at the screen here, Polze RF 1998, Invitation to the Psychology of Religion. So of course, Polze is the author of the book. Book was published in 1996. Now, Invitation to the Psychology of Religion is the title of the book. But then in brackets or parentheses, you say second edition, full stop, and then after that, Boston. That means the city where it was published is Boston, and Allen and Bacon are the publishers of that particular book. Now, the other alternative, again, that you can see here, informally published web document, right? That was a book that's published by, of course, a credible publisher. But if you have, in this case, informally published web document, again, you have the name, like Degman, D, 2009, APS Style Essentials, retrieved. So you add retrieved from HTTP Vanguard, Duke faculty, and so forth. The details there are indicated, ladies and gentlemen. And in that situation, that is an informally published web document, and that's how you cite it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, you may also have an informally published web document, but without date, right? Again, in the case of Nelson, as you can see here, in that section where you put the date, like published in 1996, right, you have parentheses, but you place there ND, N, full stop, and then D, full stop, and that's parentheses, and you go ahead again and you say retrieved from this one and so forth. But you can also have informally published web document and no author, no date. Again, if no author and no date is there, then you take the first few words that constitute the title of that paper, like gender and society, right? Again, full stop, into brackets, N, full stop, D, and that's in parentheses, retrieved from that website, ladies and gentlemen. Now, again, if you have abstracts from secondary sources or databases, again, you can see that on the screen here, ladies and gentlemen. And that's how you write, and that's under number 8, abstract, where you have Garitek and Degman 1990, effect of server introduction on. So you go ahead, you have the Journal of Applied Social Psychology, then you have the volume again, and of course, or issue number in this case, and the page numbers, but abstract retrieved from Psych Info database, ladies and gentlemen. So I think you can follow through, right? Let's now show you on the screen here, article or chapter in an edited book. Again, SHE-JD, Religion and Sexual Adjustment in, because it is published in a book, right? You say in J.F. Shoemaker, and that is really the editor of that book, Religion and Mental Health, page 70. Again, follow the rules, ladies and gentlemen. Where there is a full stop, put a full stop. Where there is a comma, put a comma, ladies and gentlemen. So again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a diagnostic or statistical manual of mental disorders, this is how you reference in this case. American Psychiatric Association 2000, full stop, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 4th edition, of course, text review. Again, follow the rules. Where there's a full stop, you put a full stop, and where you have, of course, a comma, put a comma, ladies and gentlemen. So, ladies and gentlemen, now I can show you or give you an example of all this. You can see the references there, right? That's how, and you see how these are certainly indented, ladies and gentlemen, and how they are presented, ladies and gentlemen. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, it was a pleasure for me to certainly have you in this workshop, ladies and gentlemen. I must say that the job has not been very easy for us to go through all these workshops, but in one way or the other, we have managed to cover right from workshop 1 up to workshop 9, ladies and gentlemen. Just to remind you what we have covered in this workshop, we are still dealing with PhD seminar series in business management, and we are handling this very important area of navigating the PhD terrain. And of course, this time we have handled citations, references, and plagiarism in academic writing. But of course, we started with plagiarism. So we have plagiarism, citations, and references in academic writing, ladies and gentlemen. And the aspects that we have discussed, right, I I did really give you an introduction in form of what plagiarism is all about. Then we went to types of plagiarism. So we have discussed plagiarism of ideas. We have discussed word-for-word plagiarism. We have discussed plagiarism of sources. We have discussed plagiarism of authorship. We have discussed institutional plagiarism that may appear in terms of ghostwriting, in terms of honorary authorship, and in terms of political speech writing. Then from there we went to the third element of what an APA is, why it is important to cite, when is APA style used, and then, of course, we ended with the text citations and references, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for being very patient with me and listening to my presentation in this workshop. I can only say I wish you the best. Stay well, stay safe. I wish you a nice evening. Bye, ladies and gentlemen.